So I thought I'd make this video about my experiences going through the court system for a sexual assault. It might get a little triggering. I'm not going to go into specifics of like how I was assaulted or anything like that, but there was a lot of victim blaming in my situation and stuff like that. So if that's a trigger for you, or of course that's a trigger for you, maybe don't listen to this video. But otherwise, I hope you can like hear it, and I hope it helps you, or like helps you understand what people go through or whatever. Um, so anyway, I filed a police report in 2020 in January for a sexual assault from 2017, and it had been like 2.5 years since the assault, but I didn't like know I was assaulted until like a month before I reported. So I went to the police station with my mom, and like this one officer like talked to me. I had to like wait for a while. Like then an officer came out and spoke to me, but yeah, she was great. I really liked her. Like she was asking me all these questions, but mostly it was just like asking me to tell my story more than asking me any questions. So I was telling her what happened and all that, and then she told me that he could be in like really serious trouble, or that he could like I could have him charged, but potentially, but I was not expecting that, and so I told her I didn't know what I wanted to do, but then I started feeling bad for him, and then she was like, "No, you do not need to feel bad for him. Like he did this to you. He ruined his own life, that sort of thing." So anyway, I walked out of the police station, and I actually went to class right after for 6 hours, which was not a good decision. But anyway, I then had another follow up interview 2 days later because the detective who interviewed me was not certified in the sexual assault course. So she wasn't able to like do the official video recorded interview. So I went back and they sat me down at a table, like turned the camera on. I brought like a sexual assault center advocate with me, or like support person, and they wouldn't let her in. I was told that they didn't want my emotional support to be on record because then they could ask me about it, which makes sense, but it still kind of sucked. So anyway, they interviewed me. I don't remember how long it was, but yeah, she asked me like a million questions about what had happened and just like various details. When she was questioning me, she did ask me what I was wearing, which I mean, I found it kind of offensive, but I was expecting it because I was told that that's something they usually ask. But they also asked me what he was wearing, so it made up for it a little bit. But for the longest time, I was really offended by it. It was like, why the hell does it matter? But then I realized that like if there had been a witness or something, knowing what I was wearing, it might help them like ID me, I guess. So I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but it just felt kind of victim blaming, I guess. So anyway, the interview was over, and they let my mom and the sexual assault center advocate come back in, and she was like, "Yeah, you have grounds for charges here." So she asked me what I wanted to do, and I wasn't sure, but I've been told not to press charges. And then I was like thinking about it. But then I was told her I was thinking about it, but then she started to like kind of pressure me into pressing charges almost. Like she talked about how like it's really hard, but it's like really empowering and can do like wonderful things for people. Or maybe not wonderful, but how it can like really help people and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. And it made me really want to report it, but I was like, I should probably tie and like, or like have him charged, but I was like, I should probably take some time to think about it first. So I told her I needed some more time. She asked me how much time I needed, and I was like, I don't know. I just need some time. So I was actually supposed to have a call with her to discuss things the day COVID shut down. Like everything shut down. So yeah, she didn't get back to me. So I was just kind of waiting for a while, then like trying to figure things out on my own. And then I realized that I really wanted to have him charged. So I called the officer. We spoke for a bit, and then my case got referred to two investigators. So they called me like a week later or whatever it was and said that they wanted to come by and asked me when was good. And I told them I was heading into my exam week, but they said that like we could wait and do it later, but it was going to be another month before I'd be able to do that. So I just wanted to get it over with. And I thought it was like them coming to the house, giving me some paperwork, introducing themselves. I didn't think it was going to be anything intense, so I agreed. So they came over to the house, but then proceeded to interview me, um, because I guess there were some things missing from my statement. Like, the officer who did the interview didn't ask me all the questions that they needed to be asked. So I had to be interviewed again with no warning. And for some reason, the male detective was the one viewing me instead of the female detective. And they didn't even ask me, like, what I was comfortable with. I found it a little weird being interviewed by a man, but it didn't really bother me that much. But anyway, so, like, they asked me a million questions, but then there was this, like, in addition to the sexual assault, there was also some, like, inappropriate things and like sexual things that he had said to me as well. So I like mentioned that, and then he wanted to know like the details of that conversation because I guess I forgot to include it in my statement. So he just didn't seem to be able to like put it together. Like he was stumbling all over himself, like couldn't spit it out. I think he was just trying to be like overly polite or something. I don't know. And like I get it. He's just like a middle-aged man asking this young woman about sex stuff, but it still just made things way more uncomfortable than they needed to be. Like ultimately, I was the one who was like, "Oh, so you want to know the details of this inappropriate conversation we had?" And he was like, yeah." And so I kind of had to ask the question rather than him. Um, so anyway, I told him, and then he asked me if I had any scars at the time of the assault. Um, so I showed him my self-harm scars, and I was like, "Oh, these ones," and he just like looked away really quick, and it's not something I do anymore, but I still have those scars. So yeah, that made me feel really uncomfortable and like kind of judged. And then they left, and that night I had a paper that I had to finish writing. Like it was a group project, and like everyone was emailing me all their parts I had to put together. So I stayed up like past midnight working on it, and then like wrote an exam the next morning. I was a mess. Like I did okay on my exam, but not as well as I like should have. And I think it's because of like being interviewed and stuff like that. Um. Anyway, like I didn't hear. They like told me after while I was being interviewed. They like by the investigators. They said that they would were going to arrest him, um, and stuff like that. And I felt kind of bad about it. And the female officer was kind of trying to reassure me. Um, so they left, and then like didn't hear anything for a month. And when I finally heard something, it was like I had reached out to the detective to ask a question, and then I guess she was on vacation, but she called me anyway, which I really appreciated. And then like answered my question and gave me a bit of an update on the case. And I guess I knew that there was another girl who had been assaulted by him, or like something had happened to her. Because when I reported the incident to my boss, they mentioned that there was another girl who had like a very similar complaint. So I mentioned that to the police when I was interviewed. So I guess they like found her and some other girl, um, who had also been assaulted by him. And so they were getting like their statements and all that, and it was taking a long time because the girl had to quarantine, and it was a whole ordeal. So then I was just kind of waiting for things to happen, and then I actually asked if I could watch him get arrested, and they said no, which I wasn't surprised about, but it was kind of disappointing because I thought it would be really empowering to be able to like watch from a distance, like from my own car. But yeah, they weren't gonna let me, so Yeah, but they said that they'd already tried once already, but they weren't successful, and I guess they try and time it for like the right minute or whatever to make sure that like it doesn't put the public at risk and stuff like that. So I guess they just like showed up and goes to home or something. Like, I don't know. So then it was like another few weeks before the actual arrest was made. I think it was like end of September, 2020. And then I got a phone call saying he'd been arrested and he'd been charged with 2 counts of sexual assault. So I asked the officer, was that just for me or is that for both of us? Because I guess the third girl decided not to press some charges, which I totally understand. So they said it's for both of you. And I was like, oh, like, why weren't there more charges then? Because he sexually assaulted me twice and he sexually harassed me, I think. And the officer said to me, well, they were really close together. I didn't want to annoy the judge or make it seem excessive. It would be different if it was violent, but he didn't beat the hell out of you. Like, somehow my assault wasn't violent enough for them to need to, like, pursue any kind of action further than, like, the 2 charges. Well, which I think is ridiculous because every sexual assault, by the nature of it, is violent. Some are different than others, obviously, but it is an act of violence. So anyway, I got off the phone with her and then like stayed up till midnight working on my assignment. Woke up the next morning, wrote my exam, didn't do very well on it. Or like I did okay, but not as well as I would have. Because like I was interviewed without real warning. Like I didn't know they were gonna like ask me all those questions. So yeah, otherwise I would have said no to that, and I would have waited till after for like another month or whatever. So anyway, um, yeah, the first court date was November 1st, and I was well actually before that, the I found out from my school that the guy who assaulted me was actually a student as there as well. And I thought he graduated because he mentioned he went to that school when we met. So I thought at that point he had graduated and moved on, but they were like, no, he's still a student. So that did not make me very comfortable. And the school said that I could like make a complaint against him if I wanted to, and I said that I did. I made an appointment, but then I was like, I should talk to the police officer first. So I talked to the police officer in charge of my case, asked if I could like use some of the evidence or whatever, and she was like, yeah, you can't do that. And she was like, and don't. She called me and she was like, yeah, don't go to the school. And she was like, ask me why I wanted to, and I said that I didn't feel safe on campus knowing he was there. And she said, well, you're not on campus right now, you're online. And I was like, I know, but I could be called onto campus at any moment for work because I would work with the school. And she said, oh, well, he's under conditions to not talk to you. Because, like, the conditions put on him when he was arrested was don't talk to, like, don't communicate with or, like, go near the 2 survivors. But they did not put a restriction on anything else. He did not have to surrender a firearm. He did not have to, like, avoid my workplace. He didn't have to do anything like that. It was just the minimum, do not contact them. So, yeah, I was like, I know he's under conditions not to talk to me, but like, I don't feel safe in my own house. I'm not gonna feel safe on campus. And she was like, well, why don't you feel safe on your own house? So I told her I had PTSD from multiple sexual assaults. And she was like, oh, well, how bad were your other assaults? As if what he did to me couldn't be bad enough for me to have PTSD. Or at least that's how I interpreted it. And so I told her, and I said, ranged from what he did to worse. And she said to me, why didn't you report your other sexual assaults? And I said, one, I tried to, but it was a child who did it to me, so I wasn't able to. And then I said there was one that I was thinking about reporting, and the last one was a really close friend of mine, so I didn't want to because I didn't think he did it on purpose. I think he just like didn't realize that I wasn't consenting, which is not an excuse. You cannot do that to somebody. But I didn't want to ruin his life over it. So she said to me that I needed to learn how to say no, even though I had said no during these assaults, and it wasn't respected. The only time I didn't say no was in my last one. And so, yeah, I, that really hurt my feelings. I was really upset. And so then and then she said to me that, if I went to the school, I could get a stalking charge. So I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, well, you're being the aggressor here, not him. So basically, because I want to protect myself from my abuser, I'm causing problems. I'm being aggressive instead of the fact that he did those things to me in the first place. And then she could tell I was getting kind of upset. So she was like, you don't need to get upset. And I was like, well, you just said that, like, I'm the aggressor here now. And she was like, oh, yeah, well, that's how the court's gonna see it. Meaning that, like, if I was put on trial, they would make it sound like I'm some, like, person who's after him and making things up. So, therefore, I can't actually, like, I was not able to file a complaint with the school against my abuser. So I had to deal with the possibility that I'd have to be on campus, or like when I'd go, I went to like meet up with someone who lives near campus, and I was like always looking over my shoulder, worried that he was gonna like come around the corner or something. So, yeah, even though he probably would have been expelled from school for what he did. So anyway, my first court date was November 1st, and I was basically told not to go. I was told that it could make it look like I was out to get him if I went to the courtroom. So I did not go. And then the rest of my court dates were virtual. I regretted not going to my first one, decided I wanted to go to the other ones, but they would not send me the link. And so I emailed the victim witness assistance person who was supposed to like be my liaison with the court system. And she said that it wasn't necessary. Even though I explained exactly why I did not want to, like why I wanted to go to court and why it was really important for me. So the entire court case happened without me. I had no idea what was going on until the end of May. So from like November to May, I had no idea what was going on. I would call after every court date to ask for an update, and they would say, I don't remember, I don't know, or nothing much. So, yeah, I was not super happy about that. But in May, they told me that there was a deal on the table, and they said, so how would you feel about giving him a peace bond? So basically what would happen is he would basically say that he gave us like a reason to be afraid or whatever, and they would put in a no contact order and for a year. So he would have to do some counseling and stay away from us for a year. And I was not satisfied with that. They asked me what I thought about it, and I was like, I'm not comfortable with that. I was really upset about it, actually. So they said that, well, in that case, it's going to trial. And they said I had a good chance of conviction. And they asked if I would testify, and I said yes. And so it was scheduled for December, well, like end of the year 2022 is what they said. And yeah, they said that if he was convicted, he'd likely do 6-9 months in prison plus probation and sex offender registry, which was like which was more than I was expecting because of the stories that I've heard of people going through the justice system and like them not getting anything or them getting probation or whatever. So, yeah, I left and I was like trying to deal with that. And then they told me in the end of the meeting there was a chance that my case could get dropped because of COVID, because they were like tight on resources. So anyway, a month later, the day before I graduated from college, the Crown Attorney met with me and told me that because of COVID, they didn't have the resources to pursue the case to finish the end of the trial, and he was refusing to plead guilty. So they gave him that peace bond, which was like, do not contact these women. So I'm still under a no contact order. He can't come near me. He can't talk to me. And he's not allowed to have weapons until September. But after that, it'll be like this never happened. He doesn't have a record. And I believe he can keep his job working as a child and youth counselor, even though he assaulted me in front of a child. Yeah. And like, throughout the process, there were more like dismissive comments, victim blaming comments, just like a lot of garbage. Actually, 3 days before my last court date, I overdosed because I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But yeah, I'm still really struggling after. I still have really bad PTSD. Um, Even with how everything ended and like how everything went down, I don't regret coming forward because now it's on his record. So not on his record in the sense that like when he does a criminal reference check, I don't think it shows up. But if someone else were to file a report against him for like anything, there'd be a record of him having sexually assaulted us, and so that would make any future complaints more credible, and then he could be like brought to justice, I guess. One of the other things that really bothered me is they told me that if he violated his peace bond, they probably wouldn't tell me. So if he contacted the other victim, or if he like had a weapon, or he has to be on good behavior too. So if he were to like commit a crime or like do something really stupid and the police have to call and like intervene, then he could get in trouble. So yeah, they told me that if any of those things wouldn't happened, then I wouldn't know about it unless it happened to me. So the only reason I would know if he violated his peace bond is if he contacted me, which he hasn't. Thank goodness. So yeah, but I have no idea. Maybe he already violated his peace bond and I just don't know about it. Who knows? But I'll never know. Um, which really bothers me. And like, I don't understand why a pandemic should affect the decision in a criminal case. Like, oh, so just because it's COVID, it doesn't matter that he sexually assaulted us. Like officially, he didn't sexually assault us as far as like what's on record, because peace bonds aren't for actual crimes. It's for if they think someone's about to commit a crime. It's like generally what they're used for. So he had to admit that he gave us a reason to be afraid, but that is it. So like as far as the court's concerned, I was not sexually assaulted. And then the other thing was that because it wasn't like a finding of guilt or like a plea deal, like officially with like him pleading guilty, I was not allowed to do a victim impact statement. Like normally when like victims or survivors go through the criminal justice system, if there's a guilty plea or it goes to trial and they're found guilty, the survivor gets to make a victim impact statement explaining how it like affected them and stuff. But I asked to do one and they told me I didn't have that right. So that also really affected me. But anyways, that's all to say this is how it's not just like, hey, you make a report and it's done. It's not easy. It's ongoing. Like it took almost 2 years from the time I reported for it to finish. And that's without a trial. If there was a trial, it would have been at least another year. And that's if everything was on time. So yeah, the system really sucks, and I hope to try and make it better.